Hi everyone, and welcome to our webinar on distance learning with G Suite for Education in Ireland. It's great to see so many of you joining us today and already being very active in the chat. So keep that up. Let me start by introducing myself and our speakers today. My name is Yvette, and I work at Google in the Google for Education team for Ireland, and I will be your host for today. We also have my colleague Kiri joining us from the UK. She's a national account manager, and she will be here to tell you more about Google for Education, how you can sign up, and also here to answer any of your questions. We also have Laura and Andrew joining us from EdTech Team UK. They're both Google certified trainers, and they will show us more about how to use Google Meet and Classroom. And in the invitation, we also promised you some school stories. So we have Lorraine and Simon. We are very happy that you also made it to this webinar, and they will share more of their stories on how they have adapted to distance learning. So our agenda for today, we will start with the basics. So Kiri will tell us about how you can sign up for Google for Education, G Suite for Education. This is really for people that are not really familiar with Google for Education yet, but we will cover all the basics on how you can sign up, how you can verify your domain, and how you can get started. And then afterwards, we will get hands-on with G Suite, where Laura and Andrew will show us a demo. And then after this, we will have a panel discussion with the school leaders, and they will tell us really more about their whole experience journey with G Suite and distance learning. We will also have time for Q&A, either at the end of the session, but please feel free to use the live chat if you have any questions, because we will also be able to pull up your questions in the middle of the session. So after every section, we can stop and answer any of your questions that you may have. So what is Google for Education? It is different things, really, and G Suite for Education is a large part of it. G Suite is a set of productivity tools such as Google Sheets or Docs that you might be very familiar with. It's all centered around Google Drive. And Google Classroom is a part of it. Google Classroom is one of our main tools for education, and that's something that we will cover more in depth in this session. We also have Chromebooks, but Chromebooks are not something that we will cover in depth today. But these are basically devices, computers that are very handy for education because they are super simple, boot up in under 10 seconds, and they don't need any antivirus or additional software, and are very popular in several countries. They are the #1 selling device in Sweden or the Netherlands, for instance, but also a lot of Irish schools use them. So, for instance, our 2 school speakers today, they can also tell you more about their experience with Chromebooks. So we will not cover this more, but if you are interested, then let us know in the comments, and we can also answer your questions regarding this. Before we dive into the content, I wanted to share a couple of additional resources with you, as we will only cover the basics right now, but there are a ton of additional resources that you can reach out to after this webinar. You are probably familiar with the Distance Learning Events website because you have used it to sign up for this webinar. Currently, we are organizing several webinars on different topics on G Suite. We dive deeper into products as well, and we record all of our webinars. So if you head over to this website, you can check all of our past webinars and also sign up for the upcoming ones. And if you head over here, you will also see that we have something called virtual office hours, which is a great way for school leaders and IT leaders to get one-on-one contact with Google experts. So if you want to get started, but you get stuck somewhere or need some expert help, then you can sign up for virtual office hours. Next, we also set up a Teach from Home hub. This is a website that we have created in response to the coronavirus crisis. Here you can find a lot of resources on how to deal with this situation, from how you can engage your students at home, how you can keep in touch with your colleagues and other teachers, how you can host a class from home with or without video call. There are just a lot of interesting resources that you can check here. And those of you that are maybe already a bit familiar with G Suite probably have heard about the Teacher Center. This is our #1 training hub for anything related to G Suite. So if you would like to learn more about the products and features, check out our trainings here. If you're really keen, you can also get a certification to become a level 1 or level 2 educator, or even a Google certified trainer, such as Laura and Andrew on the call. This is really for everything, not just getting started, but to really master the platform. And within our Teacher Center, we have also launched a new session of series. These are just short, snappy trainings that your staff can get in their inbox. It's very digestible and easy to follow. So it's also a great way to teach staff about the different features from home when you are not able to hold an in-person training for them. And lastly, I wanted to share with you that our training partner in Ireland, Camara, has also set up a training hub where they are hosting every week 4 to 5 webinars, which are completely free. And as I said, today we will only cover the basics of G Suite, but they also have sessions on the different features such as Jamboard or Meet, and it can be really handy to dive deeper. And as I said, it's specifically for Ireland, so feel free to check them out as well. And with that, I will hand it over to Kiri to introduce us to G Suite.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. My name's Kiri, I'm in the Google for Education team for the UK. My focus is on Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland and London. So I'm really excited to be in this webinar today with you folks from Ireland. So what I'm going to run through is just really a quick and simple steps on how you can actually get up and running with G Suite for Education. And probably most of you on the call are using it already, but there may be some who are brand new to it who are just here to learn about what tools are available. So step #1 is that basically you need to sign up for a G Suite for Education account. So essentially, if you just type in get started with G Suite for Education, or you go to Google for Education sign up, you'll find that there's a form for you to fill in. It's really important that you make sure that you use the domain that you want to use that's either linked to your school website or one that's linked to your current email addresses. And that's because you need to be able to verify your domain, which is step 2. So essentially you would need access to be able to verify that you own that particular domain. So you may need to speak to your IT provider or the person within your school who manages your current domain. And that's really just an integral part of kind of getting the approval process from Google. Step 3 is you need to decide on an organisation structure. So generally, I think for Irish schools, the role-orientated structure will probably be the most relevant. So essentially, you would separate your students from your teachers, from staff, from other guests that you might have, and then you would have the grades of your students underneath your students. And the reason why this is really important to do early on is because essentially you're going to want to turn off and on services for students depending on their age, and also depending on whether they're teachers or students. So if you get this right to start with, it's just going to make it really easy to administer some of those security policies that you may want to differentiate between different people in your organisation. Step 4 is basically creating your user accounts. Now, you can speak to one of your Google for Education partners who will be able to support you with this. But essentially, it's really quick and easy to do with kind of like a one-step, just to get all of your users into your admin console to get using the tool straight away. So right now, where we're seeing a fairly big demand for online learning and for students to kind of get up and running fairly quickly, we're seeing schools kind of just basically upload a spreadsheet, a CSV file with all of their user information on. And essentially, it will pre-populate your users to use G Suite for Education. But there are other ways to do this, and we can actually do automated processes. So you can link straight from your MIS system into your G Suite for Education, and it will kind of auto-update as schools, as children move around classes or move schools. And this just means that you'll have a better long-term kind of setup, particularly as students come and go from your school. So there's a couple of ways that you can do that identified on this slide, but definitely kind of to get started, I would definitely recommend just doing the kind of one upload to start with, and then you can start looking at the more complex options through partners or third-party tools as a second step. We also, it's really important that you're kind of setting your password requirements for students and teachers as well. And obviously this will vary depending on the student age, because, you know, it's not necessarily going to be like really easy for a young pupil to sign into something, particularly if it's their first time and if you're not there currently to support them through that. So also setting passwords is really important in terms of the strength and what type of password that they need to create for their account. So generally speaking, for a teacher, you probably want to set a more difficult password, and then for students, obviously maybe a bit of an easier one. And there are other things like enabling and setting up your services. So you may want to turn on Google Classroom and Google Drive and Hangouts Meet for now. And you may look at Gmail and some of the other services that are available at a later date when, you know, maybe think people are back in school, and it will be easy to manage that change. You can also customize your user settings. So it's really important when we start to look at the tools that you can collaborate, and it's really great to collaborate with your fellow teachers, or also for students to collaborate on work together. But maybe you don't want your students to collaborate or share documents externally outside your organization. So there are some user settings that you may want to make sure you've got in place before you kind of allow free reign access to your students. And then you'll also need to establish your super admins. And the reason for that is they're going to be basically really crucial in managing your G Suite for Education account. They'll be the ones who have access to everything in terms of your settings. They'll be able to give delegated admin access to be able to change passwords. And so it's really important that you establish who they are. And generally, as a rule, depending on the size of your school, you'd probably have 2 to 3 super admins. So usually your head teacher, a safeguarding lead, and your IT manager would be a fairly good representation across all different departments. That was a really quick start guide on how to get started, and we have actually created a document for you to go through step by step, and it actually outlines some of those settings that I referred to, because obviously we don't have time to go through every single setting that you'd need to have turned on. I noticed that someone already asked the question in the chat about a student appearing in their classroom, and that could well be because the setting is on at the moment in your admin console, where users can essentially join your classes if they're not part of your organization. So this quick start guide will give you all of those recommended settings that we would suggest on how to get started now. So definitely want to go and take a look at and to share with your IT staff. That's all from me. And now I'm going to pass over back to Yvette, I think, who is here. Hi.
Hi again, and thanks, Kiri. So I see that we have a couple of questions, and Andrew is also tackling them in the chat, so please keep them coming. We don't have any specific ones for Kiri right now, I think, about sign up, so we will go directly further with our demo with Andrew and Laura.
Hi, everyone. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Laura. I'm a school teacher. I'm also a trainer with EdTech Team, and I'm a researcher looking at digital tools for learning. So I'm very happy to be here with you today. I'm just going to take you on a quick tour of Google Classroom. I'm very aware that I can talk about Classroom all day, so I have actually set a timer on myself to stop myself from going on too long. But do answer any questions that you have in the chat, and I'll try to get to them afterwards. So hopping over to my demonstration classroom over here, I'm going to just really start from the beginning with you and give you the opportunity to join a classroom that I make so that you can have a playground with it. So first of all, what is Google Classroom? It's like the organizational hub for your lessons. So this is the home page, and you can see here each of these squares represents a class that I teach or that I have co-teaching on. So making a class is very straightforward. You look for this plus button over here, and as a teacher, I can create a class, and I give it a name, Demo for Distance Learning. Google's very clever. It will automatically try to give you a classroom theme that reflects the wording of your classroom name. So it's quite fun sometimes seeing what it comes up with, but you can always change it and personalize it further if you choose to. As you can see, it's pretty quick to work. Even at the moment, with lots of new people in Classroom, it's not struggling too badly at all. So here we are. This is my brand new classroom. Just move things around a bit so I can still see what I'm doing. I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the various aspects of it, but the first thing I'm going to do is pop up my class code for just for a moment. If you want to join this classroom, you might not be able to if your domain locks you out, but if you do have a domain that you can join, you can go to classroom.google.com, tap in join the class, and then you'll be able to join this classroom. And if you haven't been hands-on with Classroom before, it just gives you a place to play around with and ask questions and explore. And I'll stick around on this space after the call and give you some feedback if you need any help. So that classroom code is going to be in the chat, I think. Thank you very much, Guy. And I'll carry on with the demo, but do feel free to join and play if that is helpful to you. Okay, so this is the home page of my class, and I've got different areas in the room that I can play with. So the first thing I would be looking at here is people. So that's me as the teacher, and then my students, as they join, will populate here and create a list of students. I've also got the option using this plus widget here to invite other teachers. So if I'm perhaps a new teacher or I'm new to Classroom, or if I've got a digital learning helper in my domain, I could add somebody there. I could add a central kind of cover teacher or anything like that to make my life a bit easier or give some support. And all I do is pop in their email address there and tap on the invite button and up they pop. So that's very, very easy. Okay, so once I've got my people in, well done, I've got a student, well done, hi there. I can start doing things with this space. So Stream is really useful during remote learning or distance learning, just for quick questions. And my students will quite often pop something up here and say to me, oh, I didn't quite understand the question on part 2. And it gives me a little bit of opportunity to keep that human conversation going, whether or not you're doing live face-to-face teaching. That classroom presence is a really important way of communicating with your students. Generally, I do almost everything in the classwork area. This is where I send work, share resources, have back and forth conversations, do my marking, send them video clips to look at, news articles, all kinds of things you can share, all kinds of formats through this platform. It's really flexible, and this is kind of mission control where everything happens and everything stays organised. So just for the purposes of this call, I'm going to create a couple of assignments just as demonstrations, and you'll see how straightforward it is to use. If you click on this big create button here, you'll see you get a bunch of different options pop up. Typically, I tend to use assignment for everything. And I'll talk a little bit about why that is in a moment or two. Assignment gives you the option of putting a deadline on something. And that has an integration to Google Calendar if you're using that in your school. So effectively, this pushes a notification into the student calendar so they have a sort of backup awareness of what it is you're asking them to do. So for example, I could be setting distance learning work. Typing is awful, look at that, terrible. Try that again. And here I've got this option. Now, depending on where you're up to in your sort of digital process, your work could be in a number of different places. So almost everything I have is on Google Drive, but I might have content locally stored on my computer. I can upload that too. I can share links to useful websites or resources, or I can even go directly to YouTube and search for content there and attach that to the assignment. So I can quite quickly create quite a rich experience for my students. I'm just going to grab something and pop that up for my kids. Let's go with this, not just a little document. See what we'll do. And if I haven't got something ready, I can create something directly here in the Create menu, which I can share with my students. So for example, I might share with them a set of slides, and then I might add a blank document and ask them to just feed back into this space. If you're not very familiar with working in Google Docs or Google Drive, you don't need to save content. You just need to make sure that this option here is reflecting and showing you that it's all the changes are saved in Drive. It's normally instantaneous. And then I have the option here of making a copy for each student. We'll just have a quick look at that in a moment or two. I don't want to spend too long here. I do have the option over here, if I've got multiple classes, the same and some content I really want to share. Let's say there's something fantastic in the news today. I teach religious studies and philosophy, so there's almost always something fantastic in the news. I could actually share this to multiple classes in one hit. If I pick up this drop-down menu, I could actually share this content to all my students in all my classes, which is great. It's a great time saver if it's something current, or just select the class I want. Or equally, I could differentiate, loads of students, well done people, by only selecting some of the students in my class. So it's a really flexible tool. It's useful to know that not all students will see. So if I post that just to the first 4 in my alphabet, they will see it, but nobody else will see. Students only see what's assigned to them. Due date over here, this is what I was talking about a moment ago, where you integrate to calendar. So I can put a due date and a time on here. And I can require my students to have done the work by a certain time. And I do also have the option of including a rubric here, like a mark scheme, which will speed up my marking and make it a bit easier for me, and also help my students to understand what it is I'm actually asking from them. So if I assign that now, those of you who have joined the class and become students will automatically receive a notification with the instruction about the work that I've asked you to do. You do also always have the option in Classroom of scheduling a post. This is really useful at the moment when probably most of your kids are getting your work from you in a kind of morning hit. So you can schedule a post right there where we were going to assign that. I'll just pop back up here and show you. It just has to have a title before you can do things with it. Over here, I'll just pull this across a little bit. Right next to that assign button, we've got a little drop down there, and that gives me the option of scheduling that post and saying let's have that post send automatically tomorrow morning at 8 AM instead of sending it now. So it can be quite useful. I know a lot of teachers are really struggling with workload and trying to manage their work-life balance. So you could prepare all of that in advance, even for a week or 2 weeks or more, and have it ready there. You can launch it on demand, or you can schedule it to go when it suits you. Okay, so super quickly, if I pop into this assignment, this is where I might do marking. So if I pop on and have a look on here, this opens up a marking interface for me where I can add a more detailed commentary potentially from a comment bank that I have here. So these are comments that I have preloaded, I can add that commentary very easily into the written work. I can give a private comment and feedback to that student. And if I'd used a rubric, that would also be here for me to select from to indicate where the work had landed on my marking scale. So going back to my homepage, there's a couple of other quick things to show you, which I'm going to partly hand over to Andy for in a moment. But if you're using Google Meet in your school, you do have the option of turning on a permanent meeting link for your classroom. That's my timer, which then allows you to have that as a preset digital space as a parallel to your normal classroom experience, where you're able to meet with your students, support them, help them out one-to-one. Okay, so I hope that's all right for the time being. I'll stick around for questions and I'll hand you back over. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. That was great and was super hands-on. Let's see if we have any questions for you from the chat. I see Andrew is also handling a lot of our questions. So otherwise, we can also just go on with Andrew's demo, and we can also come back to you both with any questions at the end.
No problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. So let's dig into Google Meet in a little bit more detail. Laura just talked about Google Meet a moment ago and how you can now share the link within Google Classroom. And I'm going to dig into Google Meet in a bit more detail and just show you some of the features of Google Meet. So here I'm on the start page of Google Meet before I even come into a Meet. And when you go to a Meet link, this is the page that you land on to get in. And before I even join this meet, I have some options here. So I can turn my microphone on or off before I join. I can turn my camera on or off before I join. And also on the right-hand side, if I want to hear, I can present my screen before I join. So some teachers are very nervous around appearing on camera. So even before you go into a Google Meet, you have the option to totally not appear on camera. Not an option I had today. So let's go into the Meet now and see what Meet looks like from the inside. So I'm in a Google Meet and I have some options on the screen in front of me. Now, let me just explain. About 2 months ago now, Google made some additional premium features free for all schools. And 3 key things came about at that point. Number one, the ability to have up to 250 participants in a Meet. So we could share the link to a Meet with up to 250 people, and we could have down the right-hand side up to 250 people in our Meet. Second feature, the ability to be able to record a Google Meet. So because we've got that feature, I can go down to my 3 dots, my little narrow snowman in the bottom right, and I can press record meeting. And then that will start to record. It just reminds me that I need consent to record. And then it will start to record my Google Meet. So I have the ability to record a meeting. And then the third one you can see across the top of the screen right now. And that's the ability to stream a Meet. Streaming a Meet is a bit like YouTube. I mean, you guys are watching a live stream right now inside YouTube. But with a stream, my students can only watch if they go to the same school. They're in the same organization as me. Streams can be used when you want to go to much bigger numbers than 250. So if you wanted to maybe add a whole school assembly and you maybe had 1,000 students, we're going to watch the assembly. You don't need a level of interaction in that assembly because you don't need the students down the right-hand side here with the cameras on talking. You could use a stream for that. So again, as you can see at the top of the screen, I haven't pressed start streaming, but we also have the option to stream. So Meet can do sort of 3 key things there. One, we could just come in on our own and record something. When you record, the file goes to Google Drive. So at the end of this piece, when I start recording now, if I go to stop recording, shortly it will send me an email with a link to the file, and that file will be inside Google Drive. If I was a teacher, I could stream to my class. And then finally, the third choice would be I could just bring the students in live, and they'd be on the right-hand side there. I'll be able to see them and their names under the people list. And as a teacher, I have certain controls I have over students in my lesson. So as the owner of the meeting, I would have the power, 1, to mute anyone in the call. So I can mute anyone off that was talking. Once the call reaches a certain number of people, anyone joining is automatically muted to a call. So if you've ever gone into a Meet with lots of people in, you'll have seen that before where you come in and you're muted automatically. Secondly, if someone comes in and they've got the incorrect link, I could just choose to eject them from the meeting. So I can click on them and remove them from the meeting. That's the second choice. So I've got control over that. And then finally, something that a new update to Google Meet, which is once we finish with a Meet link, so this link at the top of the screen is the link for this meeting. Once we finish with a Meet link, then that link, as long as the meeting was named, it was a nickname meeting, not a blank name meeting, like this one was named Geography Lessons I Came In. Then that link is destroyed. It's removed and people can't come back in. So as a teacher, what I'm saying to a lot of teachers is be the last person to leave the Meet, just like in your classroom, where you're the last person to leave the classroom. If you're in a Google Meet with students, be the last person to leave the Meet. And that means that then when that link is closed down, no one can re-access it again. Students can't come back in again. So lots of different ways of using Google Meet there. I mentioned a couple of the other features here in Meet while we've got the screen on. So we can see that there is a present button again down the bottom right-hand side, where I can present my screen. We also have the option at the bottom to turn on captions. So we can turn on the closed captions. And that would help people in terms of their accessibility, be able to see what's being said. So when you turn on captions, Google listens to what you are saying and then puts that at the bottom of the screen. It's down to individual users to decide if they want to turn on closed captions or not. So if they think it's relevant or useful to them, they can turn on closed captions and have that appear during your lesson while they're listening to you teach or watching you explain a new concept. So that's closed captions. And then the other buttons at the bottom of the screen, I have again the ability to turn my camera off and also the ability to turn my microphone off. Although to be fair, being in a meeting with both your camera and microphone turned off is pretty much not being in a meeting. So we have those controls down the bottom there. Obviously, we're going to answer some questions now on Google Meet. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat on the right-hand side, and we'll come over to those questions in just a moment. But that's the quick run through of how Meet looks. let's move to the Q&A phase.
Thank you, Andrew. I see we also have lots of questions in the Q&A. So let's pull up a couple of questions. Any way to select the tabs to share without the kids seeing you shifting through your computer files? Possible in Zoom, or do you always need to have them all up preloaded?
Okay, when you go to present screen, you have 3 choices on the present screen tab. And the first choice is to present your whole screen, which means they're going to see all the tabs and everything in your window. But then the other one is to present just a single window. So if you've already got your slides loaded up in a single Chrome window, you could just choose to present that, which is really useful because you can then still see the Meet window and the chat and everything else. So I quite like that option. And now there's also preferred to present just one single tab. And the present tab one is really useful if you're going to play audio or video through, because that brings the sound through from that tab as well. So there are the options for all 3 when you go to present to choose what it is you're presenting. So you don't have to have your whole screen displayed to your class.
Thank you, Andrew. We also have a question, what's the difference between Google Meet or Google Hangouts?
Yeah, this is something that confused a lot of people over time. So it used the product has gone through a series of name changes. So originally called Google Hangouts for video calls, then Hangouts Meet, and now moving over to the name Meet. But effectively, Meet indicates the video call, and Hangouts or chat is now referring to the text chat piece. So they were originally sort of called Hangouts, and they were both things together, and now they're splitting apart. So one's very clearly a video call thing, which is Meet, and chat, which will be the Google Chat piece, which will be the chat feature. So there are some references in sort of old documents to Hangouts being the video call.
Thanks, Andrew. Are live streams still only available via Meet to users in the same domain, e.g. for schools with students not set up already, wanting to stream assemblies using parents' emails?
Yeah, so you can only stream to people in your own domain with Google Meet, so that we know the people coming in to watch that lesson are students from your school. If you need to go wider, you'd have to look at some other tools. And ironically, what we're using here today is we're streaming from StreamYard, aren't we, through to YouTube. So you have to look at a tool like that if you need to go to parents. But Meet is for internal use.
Probably have time for one more. If the owner of the meeting leaves the meeting, will or can the meeting still continue?
Yeah, so if people are still in the meeting continues. So if there is someone in that meeting still, the meeting will continue. And that's why I said, in terms of like knowing that your students aren't still having a conversation when you've left, be the last person to leave the room. So until the last person has left, the meeting continues. Now, of course, as the meeting owner, you can eject everybody out of the meeting. So normally as a teacher, I would say, right, everyone, it's time to go. We all know that 2 or 3 of them would forget to go, and then I would eject those 2 or 3 out and then close the meeting down.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Maybe we have one more question and then we can move on to the panel.
And I'll answer more in the chat as well if everyone's got any other questions.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to our next part then. Thank you, Andrew. So we have Lorraine and Simon joining us. Thanks for being here. How are you doing?
Great, thanks.
Great, thanks very much for having me on, Yvette. Lovely to see you again.
Yeah, great to see you again. So before, I actually already talked to Lorraine and Simon, and honestly, it is wonderful to see how well they are managing through these difficult times and how innovative their leadership is. So I find it truly inspirational, and I hope you can inspire other schools as well. And I'm very happy to have you on the call today. So before we dive into the panel, let's do a quick introduction so you can introduce yourself to the audience. Lorraine, would you like to start?
My name is Lorraine McCool, and I'm a deputy principal in an all-girls secondary school in Dublin, Dominican College on Griffith Avenue. We've had full adoption of G Suite for Education since August 2018, and we also invested in some Chromebooks at the time, which have been in full use at maximum capacity for the last 2 years.
Amazing. Simon?
Hi Yvette, hi Lorraine, hi everybody. Lovely to be here, thank you. Simon Lewis, I'm the principal of Carlow Educate Together National School down in Carlow Town. We have been using Google Apps for Education, now G Suite for Education, since we opened back in 2008. If Google went out of business, we'd be out of business. We use it so much, so we rely on it completely.
Well, it's great to hear that you're making use of it. So before this whole situation with COVID-19 started, you both worked a lot with G Suite for Education already and Chromebooks. However, it was still challenging for you as well to adopt the distance learning. So how has it been for you? How have you adapted? Let's start with Simon now.
Thanks, Yvette. I think the first thing really wasn't a technology issue. It was more a shock and trying to adapt to these very, very strange and different times, and realizing, I suppose, that we had to get through that being overwhelmed time. And I think the biggest thing that any school could possibly do first would be to be overwhelmed for a little while before even thinking about technologies. But we did that, and I suppose we were very lucky that we've been using tools like Google Classroom for the last 3 years, and our students, I suppose there wasn't as much of a massive jump to kind of continue what we were only using for homework to start adapting within the classroom, and that really, I suppose, was our first kind of step. Let's say that we just started where we were at. Okay, great. And what about you, Lorraine? How was it at Dominican?
Yeah, I can totally relate to what Simon is saying there. It was a big shock initially getting kind of the word on that Thursday, and everybody heading home. We were very lucky that we were so far down the road with G Suite for Education. All our teachers and our students were on Google Classroom, but it took a week or two just to get everything up and running. I suppose one of the things that was the biggest challenge for us was, as the weeks went on, you realize you're not connected anymore with your teachers, with your students, and trying to work out, well, are they getting too much at work? Are they getting too little work? Things like that, So Google Forms, for example, was really, really helpful. We were able to survey our students and check in with them and see, how are they managing? Were they receiving the right amount of work? Was there anything we could do to support them? Did they have a device? Were they okay that way? And then we got braver then, and into the third week, we decided we'd have our first all staff meeting on Google Meet. So we had 58 of our teachers all checking in. And I think they were really delighted to have that connection. And from there, we started to be able to plan together. We even ran a Teach Meet on Google Meet, to show people how to use certain aspects of Google Classroom they might not have been used to before, and also even how to run a Google Meet or how to record videos to put up on Google Classroom. So that was really helpful as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And great that you mentioned it, because it's not only about teaching and keeping students engaged, but of course we also have colleagues, and within your teacher network, you want to keep your teachers engaged as well. So it's great that you've been using Google Forms to collect their feedback and keep everyone on the same page. How was it in your school, Simon? How are the teachers coping with this, and how do you keep in touch?
We keep in touch on through a number of ways, and some using G Suite, some using kind of communication apps like WhatsApp and all that kind of stuff. But we have those kind of groups. But we always meet at least once a week to check in with each other, just to see how we are. Sometimes it's for sort of a social sort of way to maybe do a kind of a table quiz, but it's more to connect with each other. And I think that's the power of something like Google Meet, where you can actually see each other and your brain kind of believes you're in the same room as them, and things like that, which is very, very useful. We also very early developed a Google site for staff, where anything we needed to do would be in one place. So all the school textbooks, the virtual ones, are on one page of our Google site. Kind of ideas for ideas that we can share are all on that Google site. So that's kind of how we've been kind of keeping in touch with each other. And our weekly staff meetings are great, because we can just essentially, what's going well, what would you like to try and do, and then we might meet later on in the week to do some of those, similar to what Lorraine was saying. We've done some Teach Meets on Google Classroom or Google Meetings on things like that.
Yeah, great to hear. So centralizing all your resources, using our tools, and then also keeping in touch regularly, both for work and for fun. And I'm also wondering, so you have a bit of a different situation in terms of students, because Simon, you're leading a primary school, Lorraine, yours is a secondary school. So I wonder, like, how did the students cope with this? Can you tell us more about that, how they have adopted? Lorraine.
Well, I suppose it's different for every student. Some of them are finding it very difficult, to keep motivated, to keep on track. One of the things we tried to do at the beginning was to get our students to stick with their timetable as best they could. And we encourage our teachers to maybe schedule work to go into Google Classroom or schedule Google Meets or whatever way they were going to communicate, at the times of their timetables, to try and keep that sort of structure. I suppose the feedback we got at the beginning was, you're given the same amount of work and it's actually taken us longer to go through it because you're not there, so I suppose we've had to adjust and take on feedback from the students. But I suppose at the same time, they're very grateful to be able to communicate through that Google Classroom space. And one of the things they found great was, if they don't have access to a device all day because they're in homes, there might only be 1 or 2 laptops between 5 or 6 people at home, they can put their Google Classroom app on their phone, do their work, take a photo, upload it or whatever. So that has been very helpful as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's also great that you mentioned that, because that's something we hear very often, that not everybody has their own computer at home and access can be an issue. But since all the apps are accessible through a smartphone as well, even through the parent smartphone, you've seen that this is a great way to keep everyone still engaged, and it's an easy way to have access. What about you, Simon?
Yeah, I suppose primary level is a little bit different in terms of the fact that half of the students, in a way, won't have, or at least half of the students won't have their own devices, and we rely a lot more on parents to supervise any kind of work that might be set by their teachers. And there's, so what we're dealing with a lot is guilt. To be perfectly honest, rather than anything else, with parents really hoping that they're doing enough, or they're doing too much, or we're giving to those kind of battles that go on. So I mean, most of our kind of using of tools to communicate with parents is reassurance of making sure that we as teachers are going to be able to put work out to our families to let them know, look, this is what's there to do, but there's no expectation that any of it will be done for all various reasons. We're in a DESH school, so our biggest concern is that people are safe, people are well, people are fed. So we use a lot of tools in terms of communication to make sure those things are in place, and then we focus on learning. So again, we use Google Classroom to put most of our stuff out, but with the expectation that it's almost optional to do the work and not to worry, and so that's kind of the way we've looked at it, I suppose.
Yes. Okay, great to hear. So you mentioned a lot of different tools now that you are using, from Forms to Claude to Meet, etc. I wonder, do you have maybe a favorite feature or a favorite tool that helped you the most in these times? Simon?
I have to say the thing that I suppose that I feel has been of most benefit would be anything to do with video, live video, something similar to this. I mean, every other tool, you don't see people. I mean, we're at the moment we're in a situation where we're not really seeing people, where we're stuck in our houses and we're not engaging really, and it's that feeling of disconnection. And I feel the one tool that has really kind of, I suppose, made me feel almost emotional, which is a bit strange, is when I have the ability to do a live video thing, whatever it might be. It might be an assembly, it might be giving a class, because it's the only time where you're getting some form of human interaction. So if I could recommend schools to do anything, it would be to use something like Google Meets or any other video tool like that.
Great, that's so great to hear. And you, Lorraine, do you have any favorite tools?
Yeah, yes, I agree with Simon there. I think one of the add-ons that came in very early was the Google Meet Grid, and we've just held a few assemblies there with our students. We had one with our 5th years on Tuesday, and we had over 100 5th year students sign up, which is just amazing. We couldn't believe, that so many of them came on, and you're able to put up the grid and see all the numbers of students there, and our year team, and our principal, and our guidance, and our chaplain, and it was really just fantastic to be able to put everybody up on the screen. And again, back to that sense of being connected, and being able to reassure our students that we are going to take care of them, we're going to mind them, and to do their very best, that everyone's doing their best, and we're working through this together. And it's lovely to be able to give that message to all of them together. And we got some feedback afterwards that they really find it great to connect in. So Google Meet, and especially that grid, is really helpful just to get everybody up on that screen.
Yeah, great to hear. I can also plus on that. I'm not in education in that sense, but even in our office, just having that grid view and seeing all the colleagues at once, that's a really great way to run meetings. Then, yeah, so we would also like to give some practical tips to the schools that are watching. Could you maybe tell anything about the resources that you reached out to? What were the most helpful things that you had in this time when you had to adapt to distance learning, even though you already were set up in terms of digitalization? Let's start with Simon again.
So, sorry, Yvette, you were breaking in and out of reception. I didn't quite get the questions.
Oh yeah, sorry. So my question was about resources. So what resources did you use that helped you to adapt to this situation? Like in this journey, what helped you the most in terms of resource?
So which it's just, I think you have a dog in the background there. Just is it what Google resource do I have that was most helpful? Is that the question you're asking?
No, I'm not necessarily referring to the tools, or not even Google resources. Just we shared a couple in the beginning, that schools can reach out to after the webinar. But I was wondering what you are using. I know you've also had your own webinars, and you're part of different networks. So I wonder, if you can give any advice on that. But Lorraine, you can also jump in if you have anything to share on that.
Sure. So the resources that really have helped me the most, I guess, probably are kind of various networks that I'm involved in. I'm on the board of directors of the Irish Primary Principals Network, and I found sharing experiences with other principals who are basically trying to shift their schools from being offline entities into online entities in a very, very quick amount of time. Completely overwhelming. But given that everybody else, there's 3,000 other principals and primary school principals out there equally overwhelmed, I found that quite strangely reassuring. I was very happy that I was able to host a webinar to about 400, 500 principals about a week after a lockdown, and we were able to share those experiences with them. And it actually calmed us all down a little bit. And really, apart from that, I just, I think there's another group called CESI, CESI.ie. They're the Computers in Education Society of Ireland. They've been extremely helpful in terms of technology advice as well. So there are two places I found really useful for resources.
Great mentions. Thanks, Simon. Lorraine, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, we're very lucky, I suppose, because we've been engaging with G Suite for Education for a few years now. We've a number of teachers in the school who are, you kind of call them digital leaders. They're very interested in it, and we have a fabulous staff that are really willing to, train up and do their best. So one of our best resources is actually our teachers. And at the very beginning of this, different teachers, for example, some of our maths teachers went to explore, kind of using tools that might show a whiteboard, that sort of thing. And they showed that on the Teach Meet that we ran them for the school. So they, a lot of the resources are from what we as staff, different people have different areas of expertise, and thankfully they're willing to share that. There's also a group of us have been working to get our Google certification. So, you know, we've gone on to the teacher training centre there, and I know a number of our teachers were meeting every week anyway after school, one day a week, to go through the teacher training. And it's great that someone's actually got that certification over the time. It really said this is the time now to get on with this. So that has been very helpful. And generally as well, what Simon was saying about putting up a Google site, we've set up a Google site as well for our teachers, for anything that anybody finds useful, and people are, you know, as well putting up videos there how to do, you know, different things, and we put it up there, or any resources that might be useful. So that has been very helpful. And any videos, like, it's brilliant. You can Google any video, you know, how to set up a Google form to make a quiz or whatever it is, and you can find out, and people are very happy to share that. So
Great.
That is really
Thank
helpful.
you. Super helpful tips there. We will jump into Q&A soon, but just as a last question, if you have one piece of advice that you would give to schools that are just starting with G Suite, because you've been working with it for a while, what would your advice be, Lorraine?
I think advice would be, you know, is to start, you know, fairly small. Like, first year, we really concentrated on getting everybody up and running on Google Classroom. You know, we had fantastic help. We got the PDST Tech and Ed, Stephen Gallagher, came out as an associate at the beginning of the year and trained us. So you can apply for that as a school support. Then, you know, as I say, I go back to the one of teachers training other teachers is a brilliant idea. You know, workshops, you know, at staff meetings and things like that, where, you know, we can help each other that way. And the big thing is dive in. You just have to get stuck in and, you know, start using the products. And I have to say, as a senior management team, we kind of started using it about a year before everybody in the staff was using it. And, you know, you have to use it. So as far as possible, we've used it during staff meetings, you know, sharing policies and getting everyone to comment on it. So you need to use the tools. Just dive in and try it. And, you know, if you can't do it, there's always a video there or somebody that it will help you along.
Great, just get hands-on. Awesome. Simon, what would you say?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to Lorraine. I think don't. You know, there's so many tools out there, and there's so many people offering so much stuff to everybody, and it can become quite overwhelming. So I'd suggest do one thing to start off with, just one thing, whatever that might be, whatever you're comfortable with, whether that's signing, you know, sharing a Google Doc amongst your staff, just to start off, if that's where you are. If you're ready to move on, maybe to Google Classroom, maybe have an internal kind of Google Classroom with, you know, and play school a little bit with your staff and try out the different things together. That's probably what I've been doing. I think this is a really good chance and a really good time. I know it's an awful time as well for many of us, but it's a very good time to play. And I mean, that's what we've been doing a good bit. And my staff have really been embracing it brilliantly. I mean, they're wonderful people, and they keep coming back with new ideas for me to try out. Yeah, I find that's the thing. Try one thing, and then
try one thing. Yeah. Okay, thank you both. This was really great. Now let's get everyone back for a Q&A. We have a lot of questions, I think, in the chat. So now we can pull up a couple of them, and we can also have Kiri as well. And let's see which questions we will start with. Yes, Kiri is here as well. Without a camera, I see. Okay, we have our first question. We use G Suite for email and Drive. Is there much setup to operate Classroom for our teachers and students? Does the school admin need to apply, or is it up to teachers individually?
Okay, I can answer this one if you want.
Thanks, Andrew.
Firstly, there is an option in the admin console to turn on and off each Google product. So if when you go to classroom.google.com, it's not there, that's because your school has turned it off across the whole domain. So the admin might need to slide the slider across from off to on in terms of turning it on. Once it's on in that sense, teachers can then go there. And as someone mentioned earlier in the last section, it's really nice to start playing around and using it and creating some classrooms. And teachers themselves can set up Classroom. They can invite students in and they can create their own classes that way. So really, as long as it's turned on, teachers could then start to take the lead on rolling that out to students.
Thank you, Andrew. Next question. I was on a Meet this morning. I clicked on Tile Display choice at the bottom right of the page. It flicked between 4 tiles and all. Is there any way of locking it down to all participants and not just 4?
Okay, probably me again. 2 parts to this.
Again.
There is firstly, I think people have mentioned in the chat already. So about as Google Meet has been massively used for distance learning, Google are really pushing out new features all the time to Google Meet. So around about 2 months ago now, there was a Chrome extension came out called, which someone's mentioned in the chat, called Grid View for Meet, which gave you all the participants on the window, a bit like we are now. So Google have brought that feature in partly into main product. And down in the bottom right-hand corner in Google Meet, you can click on the 3 dots, the little tiny snowman, click Settings, and then Tile View is now a choice. But as with all new features to Google, it's in that rollout period where it's coming to users over a period of days. So some people might right now not have the big sort of tile choice, and other users might already have that. And in the next week or so, that'll be out for most users. So it's sort of, I would suggest if you're only seeing 4 people down there, you haven't yet been updated to see up to 16 people in that window.
Thanks, Andrew. Next question. I can access Classroom on my Google account currently. However, I cannot join the class set up earlier in the webinar. Won't recognize the code. It's for Laura, I think.
That's fine. Hi, Sean. Essentially, when you join a Classroom, it needs to be a domain which your school considers a safe domain for you to join. So it's just that your school doesn't recognize the domain. You could have it whitelisted by your admin, and then you'd be able to join external domains. But generally, you should be able to join all of them within your own domain without any issue.
Thank you, Laura. So this was the last question that we had time for in this webinar. I want to thank you all again for joining us today, both our audience and all our speakers. Feel free to check out all our resources that we have shared. And if you'd like to rewatch this webinar, you can do so at our events page. So thank you again, and good luck on your journey, and have a great day.